Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, Alhamdulillah, last week we had covered the hijrah and the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the believers when they went from Makkah Mukarramah, the land of persecution, the land of difficulties, trials and tribulations, and finally they made their way to Medina Munawwara, where the people were anticipating and eagerly waiting for the Muslims to arrive. And we had discussed how when the Prophet ﷺ came, the people, they would stand on the rooftops, they would look from on top of the trees, they would be waiting. When is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam going to arrive? When is he going to arrive? Finally, when he came, the people were so excited, the people were so happy. On top of the treetops, on top of the rooftops, all of the people gathered together and they were reciting poetry in happiness and excitement that finally the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has finally arrived. We also talked about how the Prophet alaihi salam, his hijrah and his migration, it happened a little bit later, which means many of the Muslims, they had already migrated before the Prophet ﷺ. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, specifically, he was waiting, when is Allah Azza wa Jal going to give me specifically the command to go for hijrah? Only then will I go for hijrah. So he was waiting. And subhanallah, during this entire time, as the Muslims, one by one, they're migrating to Medina, Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu anhu, he keeps coming to the Prophet ﷺ and he's saying, hijrah, hijrah, hijrah. All the Muslims are going, what about me? Hijrah, can I go also? But the Prophet ﷺ, he would always give an excuse to Abu Bakr Siddeeq and he would say, wait, not right now. You wait a moment, you wait a minute, you wait a moment, wait some days. And he would always tell Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu anhu, لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ أَن يَجْعَلَ لَكَ صَاحِبًا. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a companion for you for your hijrah. Allah will give you somebody that you can go with together for the hijrah. And subhanallah, the sincerity of Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he had sidq in his niyyah, he had sidq, he had truthfulness and sincerity in his love for the Prophet ﷺ, that Allah made intidam, Allah made his decree and the arrangement such that that companion that was reserved for the Prophet ﷺ to go for hijrah, that was reserved for Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And initially, when the Prophet ﷺ got permission for the hijrah, the first thing he did, he went to Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu anhu. He goes to the house of Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu anhu and he says, there's something very, very important that I need to discuss with you, that I must talk to you about. Is there anybody at home? Because I don't want anyone to hear what I'm about to tell you. This is very, very confidential, classified information. It's private matter and it's very important. I only want your ears to hear this. And subhanallah, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked to Abu Bakr Siddeeq and he told him that the permission has been granted for hijrah, and inshallah I will be planning to move to go to Medina Munawwara and undertake the journey of hijrah. The first thing that Abu Bakr Siddeeq radiyallahu anhu, the first thing that he said, As-suhbata ya Rasulallah. As-suhbata ya Rasulallah. Can I be your companion? Can I be in your companionship? Can I be there with you? Can I go with you? Can I assist you? Can I be the one that's going to be at your side when you finally go to Medina Munawwara? And Allahu Akbar, imagine the greatest journey that took place in the history of Islam, the difficulty of that journey. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored Abu Bakr that he was the companion with the Prophet ﷺ during the journey. And subhanallah, Allah talks about them in the Quran. إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. When both of them were in the cave, إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ, when he said to his sahib. Look at the words that Allah uses in the Quran. Sahib literally means companion, his close friend, his close companion, close friend. This is the relationship Allah is talking about in the Quran between Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ. What did he say to his companion? لا تحزن. Don't grieve. Don't be sad. Don't fear. Don't worry about anything. إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is with us. And Allahu Akbar, we had also discussed, there was a particular person that would give food to Abu Bakr Siddiq, to the Prophet ﷺ, when they were in the cave. And on one occasion, she couldn't find anything to tie the food. So she used her own belt, she ripped it in half. Half of it she kept herself, the other half she used to tie the food. And she was given the title, always. To the end she was known with this title, ذَاتُ النِّطَاقَيْنِ. Who can tell me who this person was? Anybody remember? Who is that blessed woman, radiyallahu anha, that she would give food to the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr Siddiq when they were in the cave of Thawr? The daughter of Abu Bakr Siddiq, her name was? So we know one of the daughters of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu is the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha radiyallahu anha. But he had another daughter. Her name was? Asma. MashaAllah, good. Asma bint Abi Bakr radiyallahu anhu. So Asma was the sister of Aisha radiyallahu anha. She was married to Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awam radiyallahu anhu. So she was the one that used to bring the food. And she was given this title. She was always known by this. ذَاتُ النِّطَاقَيْنِ. The one with the two pieces of cloth. Because she cut one cloth, kept it for herself, and one piece of the cloth, she gave it for the sake of Islam. So one thing we learn from this, respected listeners, is that many times, Allah Azza wa Jal, He gives us opportunities. He gives us a chance to do good. And initially, right when we look at it, we don't understand and we don't realize what benefit there could be in any opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. In our eyes, it might just be that one salah. You're just going for salah, that's all it is. It's just one halaqah, it's just one program. It's just one campaign of charity. There are many campaigns that come and go. Right? It's just one visiting of my relative. It's just one visiting of a sick person. In our eyes, there are many opportunities. If I don't do this one, maybe another one will come. But subhanallah, in the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you never know which amal will give you that title in the akhirah. It'll give you a name in the akhirah. Allah loves that amal so much from you that it's preserved for you now. And subhanallah, look at Asma bint Abi Bakr radiyallahu anha. Right? Really think about it. How hard is it to make some food and wrap it up in a thing and give it to someone? It's not that hard, right? Subhanallah, the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, many of them went through much worse than that. They gave much more sacrifices than that. But subhanallah, it was the time, it was the place, it was the need. It was when people were not paying attention to the Prophet ﷺ, she is the one that stood up. Allah appreciated this amal from her so much. The hijrah, the Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, making intention to be the companion with the Prophet ﷺ. Outwardly, it's like, hey, there are so many people going for hijrah. What's the big deal if I'm the one with the Prophet ﷺ? But no, Allah loved this amal from him. Allah appreciated this amal from him. Allah called him the sahib, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, the close friend of the Prophet ﷺ. In the Quran, Allah praises him. So subhanallah, when Allah gives you an opportunity, always tell yourself, this could be my chance. This could be my ticket to Jannah, inshallah. This could be the one thing that will save me from Jahannam. Every chance and opportunity that you get. And subhanallah, it reminds me of one of the great ulama in England, Maulana Salim Dorat, hafidhahullah. He would say about his father, old man, elderly, very, very senior man who's been part of the community in England for so many years. So old that he was unable to drive. He couldn't drive. Old man, hard to see. And Allahu Akbar, anytime there would be a janazah, he would literally be standing on the side of the road with his hand like this, trying to get a hitchhike so that he could go for the janazah. Imagine, old man, right? Hunchback, hard for him to walk, and he's standing on the side of the road for a hitchhike. He wants to go to the janazah. So the people, they would tell him, Chacha, relax, calm down. It's hot outside. You're so old, you're so senior. It's hard for you to walk. Your knees are hurting. You already prayed your Salatul Dhuhr. It's okay, you can go home. Don't put so much taklif on yourself that now you're having to take a hitchhike just so you can come to the Salatul Janazah. If you had your own car, you had a ride, okay, come to the Janazah. You don't have a ride, it's hard for you, you don't know how you're going to come back. It's okay, take rest. You're a very pious man, you're doing so much salah, you give charity, you do so much good. You miss one janazah, it's okay, it's not a big deal. Don't put so much taklif on yourself. And subhanallah, the reply that he gave. He said, in my 70 or so years of life, whatever salah I have done, whatever janazah salah I have done, whatever charity, whatever good deeds that I have done, I don't know which one was accepted and beloved in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, maybe this janazah salah which I'm going for, maybe this will be the one that's my ticket to have acceptance and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and will save me from the punishment of the akhirah. Look at that. Every opportunity he looked at it like it's so serious and it's so important. And Abu Bakr Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, Asma binti Yazid, binti Abi Bakr radiyallahu anha, all of these great people, this was that one amal that they did, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed them so much. And eventually we're going to learn that inshallah in the battle of Badr that took place, Badr was also one of those things, it wasn't meant to be a great battle. Badr was such a thing, it was meant, we're just going to go to the Quraysh, we're going to check them, we're going to get our stuff back from them, and we're going to come back home. There's not going to be a big battle. Nobody had any clue or idea that if you participate in Badr, what izzah and what honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you. That only became known afterwards. And subhanallah, many of the companions, some of them that didn't go for Badr, they said, we missed Badr. If Allah ever gives another opportunity, Allah will see what we're going to do. Because we're never going to miss an opportunity again. They didn't know initially how much there's going to be a Badri Sahabi. Right? You didn't know at first. It only was known later on. And similarly, like I said, respected listeners, Allah gives us so many opportunities. The reality of what you do, we'll only know in the akhirah. The reality of how much that one amal will grant you, which amal will put you in a high position, you'll only know in the akhirah. So that's why as a mu'min, you should try your best. Whatever opportunity Allah gives, make the most of it. So subhanallah, the Prophet ﷺ, finally they came into Medina Munawwara. Masjid Quba was built. The first Jumu'ah was performed. The foundations of Al-Masjid Al-Nabawi began. And Allahu Akbar, the time came where the Muslims wanted to know, how should we call people for salah? Right? So the Jews, they have a system. They call the horn. They blow into the horn. It makes a big noise. And then everybody comes for their prayer, or they go to their synagogue. And the Christians, they do the bell system. So they ring the bells. And then people know from the sound of the bell, okay, it's time for the church. It's time that everybody needs to come to the church. So how should we call people to the masjid? How should the Muslims know that it's time to come for the salah? There was one companion, radiyallahu anhu, Abdullah bin Zayd ibn Abdi Rabbihi. So he had a dream where he heard the words of the adhan. He heard Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. He heard all of these words. He came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, this is what I saw and what I heard in my dream. Perhaps we can call people to salah like this. The Prophet ﷺ approved. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu comes later. He said, Wallahi, the same exact dream I had, with the same exact words. And then the inception of the adhan began like this, and none other, Bilal radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, was called to give the adhan. And I want us all to just imagine this and picture this. 2 days ago, who was Bilal radiallahu anhu? He was that same slave that people, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the master, would put his foot on the neck of Bilal radiallahu anhu in the hot desert sands of Makkah Mukarramah. That's Bilal yesterday. That's Bilal 2 days ago. Stones and boulders placed on his chest till he can't breathe. That was him 2 days ago. And Allahu Akbar, 2 days later, not really 2 days, you guys understand what I mean, it's just yesterday. Now, right afterwards, what happens? Out of all of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the one who is called, the one who is accepted to be the mu'adhin of Islam, the mu'adhin of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Who was it? It was Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And I want us to understand the mizaj and the nature, the temperament of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Some of us would think the Prophet alayhi salam, noble lineage, noble household. So he will only mix with people who are also from noble family members. Allahu Akbar. The closest person who was always next to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam amongst them was Bilal radiallahu anhu. When the Prophet alayhi salam would go on safar, when he would go on a journey, Bilal would stay in the same room as the Prophet alayhi salam. And he would literally wake up the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam for salah. Sometimes he would come, he would remind the Prophet alayhi salam, as-salah, as-salah, fajr time, fajr time. So look, the Prophet alayhi salam, he never looked at a person's social status. That I'll only befriend you if you're noble lineage, noble household, noble this, people respect you. No, the Prophet alayhi salam, he looked at a person's heart. He looked at a person's akhlaq. He looked at the person's sincerity. He didn't look at the person's pockets. If the person was sincere and they were upright and they were righteous, the Prophet ﷺ would bring that person very close. And subhanallah, Bilal yesterday who was on the floor, today where is Bilal radiallahu anhu? He's on top of the Kaaba giving the adhan. Yesterday he's on the floor. Today where is he? He's on top. He's shining in front of the entire ummah. Every adhan that is given till Yawm al-Qiyamah. Think about it. Every adhan that is given until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And in our history of Islam, how many pious mu'adhins there have been. That 40 years, 50 years, punctual, 5 times a day they give adhan, they never missed in 30, 40 years. There's been many like this in the history of our Islam. All the rewards of these adhans, it will all go back to Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Because he's the one that initiated, he's the one that started. What does this show us, respected listeners? Take opportunities. Be the first to do good. Don't wait for other people to push you. You be the one to push others. You be the one to start. Subhanallah, our youngsters here, how many people, how many youngsters we know, mashallah, they're the first to start Jumu'ah in their high schools. They're the first to start Jumu'ah in their colleges. They're the first to start MSA programs. And Allahu Akbar, years and years and years go by. Every Jummah Salah that takes place in that school, every Salah that takes place in that school, every Halaqa or Bayan lecture that takes place as part of that MSA, the rewards go back to you guys. So initiate, start good, look for opportunities. This is how the Prophet ﷺ, how he was and how he taught the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And just as a side point, the interesting thing about Bilal radiallahu anhu, eventually when Islam began to spread, the Muslims got control of Baytul Muqaddas, Jerusalem. And the first adhan that took place in Jerusalem was also by Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So he was the first mu'adhin of Medina Munawwara. When Baytul Muqaddas was taken by the Muslims, the first adhan of Jerusalem, the land of Anbiya, the first adhan was done by Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And don't forget also, when Makkah, Fathul Makkah took place, when Makkah was conquered by the Muslims, the first adhan in Makkah was also by Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So in all three harams, all three sanctuaries of Islam, the three most sanctified places of worship in Islam, Makkah, Medina, and Al-Bayt al-Muqaddas, all three, the muadhin was Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So eventually now, as we had been mentioning, the Muslims are now in Medina Munawwara, and for the first time, they are independent. They have control. And now there's a different ball game. There are different worries. There are different challenges now. Because now, government administration, it's all in the hands of the Muslims. How will you facilitate government control? How will you have administration between the different tribes that are now in Medina Munawwara? Because it's not just Muslims there. Economically, how will you make sure the Muhajireen that just came to Medina, that they're going to be able to look after themselves and look after their families? So you had all these different factors that Muslims now had to be worried about. In Makkah Mukarramah, they didn't have to worry about government. They didn't have to worry about economics. They didn't have to worry about finance. All of that was taken care of. The only thing they were worried about is having freedom of practicing religion. So now in Medina, they're free, they can practice. But there's a lot of other factors that they have to worry about now. So subhanallah, when the Muhajireen came to Medina Munawwara, the people of Medina, the Ansar, they were people that fida. They gave everything for the sake of Allah and for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ and for the sake of the Muslims. So much so, the primary thing that they had in Medina was their date palms. They would have their gardens, and subhanallah, you can still see today the beautiful, delicious dates of Medina Munawwara. That was their trade, that was their primary business. So they told the Prophet ﷺ, they said, Ya Rasulullah, these date palms that we have, whatever is our property, whatever we own, these Muhajireen that have come, 50-50. We'll go 50-50 with all of them. They'll get it for free, no problem. We make them our business partners, 50% share, they can own. And subhanallah, the Muhajireen, what was their attitude? For normal, ordinary people, free money, free business, labbaik, let's go, let's do it. Subhanallah, the Muhajireen, they were very humble. They were very, very shy. They said, "Oh Ansar, Jazakallah khair for your love. May Allah reward you for your mahabba, for your concern. We don't want to take 50-50 and take your property like this. You let us work on your fields. Let us work on your gardens. We will sweat. We will hurt our backs. But we will work and we'll divide the profits. We will divide them amongst each other. But we won't take property of your gardens." Right? So subhanAllah, even though they're offering, they didn't just take everything for themselves. There was another famous companion radiallahu anhu. His name was Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu. So the Prophet ﷺ, we mentioned last week, he did mu'akhat. Mu'akhat means the Prophet ﷺ would pair one muhajir with one ansari. One muhajir with one ansari. They would be treated as brothers. So he would have to look after him and he would have to look after him. Financially as well. And if one of them passed away, the other one would inherit as well. So in the mu'akhat, which was done with Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, the person said, "Oh Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, don't worry, I got you, half of my wealth is yours, here you go, come take it." Pulled out a big stash. He said, "Here you go." And subhanallah, look at the companions radiallahu anhum. They were not hungry, thirsty people that wanted to just grab everything. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, he said, "Jazakallah khair akhi, dallani ala suq." He said, "Can you tell me where's the marketplace? Show me where's the market. I will start my own business. I will learn the trade and I will do my own business. And I will learn a little bit on my own." And subhanallah, he goes to the marketplace. He starts off very, very small. And eventually, Abdul Rahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu, as many of us know, he became one of the most wealthy people in all of the Arabian Peninsula. one of the most wealthy. And he came to Medina with what? Just the clothes on his back. This mentioned that when the caravan of Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiyallahu anhu would enter Medina Munawwara, you know, he would send his camels, he would send his caravan, Syria and Yemen and all these different places they would do business, and they would come back to Medina and the camels would be loaded with all the different things that they purchased and, you know, all the different things that they got. When the camels would sit down, all of Medina Munawwara used to shake. It would feel like an earthquake. Medina would shake. And people would get startled and say, oh no, Abdul Rahman bin Auf probably just came back from his business trip. That's all it is. So you see the barakah that these people had, because they were sincere, they were hardworking, they did things for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't do things for greed. They didn't do things because they were greedy. They did things because they were sincere. And that is the key for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's barakah. They weren't greedy. They didn't want things just for themselves. They were honorable people, and that's why Allah Azza wa Jal blessed them so much. The Ansar and the people of Medina, you know, just a side point, it comes to my mind, subhanallah. You could see their hospitality even today. You could see the mahabbah of the people of Medina even today. That quality which their ancestors had, many of the people of Medina, they still have this quality today. And subhanallah, you see, if you ever get a chance to be there in the month of Ramadan, you will have at least 10 people, if you're in the masjid, at least 10 people, they'll be grabbing you. Come have iftar with me. Come have iftar with me. One guy pulls you this way, one guy pulls you that way, one guy pulls you that way. You say, how can I make iftar in 5 different places with all 5 of you? But subhanallah, each one so eagerly, so much jazba, so much anticipation. Please, no, you come with me. Please, please. The other guy will come on this side. Don't listen to him. You come with me. Don't listen to him. Please, sit on my dastarkhan. And subhanallah, the whole masjid, all you see is dastarkhan upon dastarkhan. Dates, bread, you know, tea, all of these things, they want to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guests. The same way that the Ansar were at that time, they wanted to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guests. And this is a very, very beautiful quality that we should put into ourselves. Having this desire to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen. Everybody has an opportunity to serve Allah's deen. Some people, mashallah, they may give lectures, they may do this, they may do that. For some people, their service of deen might be vacuuming the masjid. For some people, their service of deen might be cleaning the masjid bathrooms. Allahu Akbar. If that is your service to deen, marhaban. Thank Allah for it and take the opportunity. If your service for deen is to volunteer in your masjid, be a volunteer and do things for your community, do things for your masjid. Allah gives so many different ways that you can serve His deen. The people of Medina, one of the primary ways that they served Allah's deen was through their hospitality. Through ikramul dayf, service to their guests. That was their greatest service to Islam, the people of the Ansar, in these initial stages of the Hijrah. The incident mentions that one of the Ansar, he had the Muhajireen family at his home, and subhanallah, these people were going through tough times and difficult times financially in their own home. But they did not reject the invitation, they did not reject to invite the Muhajireen to take care of them and feed them and look after them. Even though they're going through financial difficulties themselves. And it's mentioned in the narrations, وَالَّذِينَ وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً. They give preference over themselves, even though they have poverty with themselves. They're not worried about their own poverty. They're hungry, but they're still feeding other people, subhanAllah. So they made the plan. The family made the plan that when the Muhajireen come, we're going to put out the lantern. We're going to put out the light. So that when they eat, they will think the Ansar are also eating. But subhanAllah, there's not enough food. Only the Muhajireen will eat. We will sacrifice our dinner for tonight. We're not going to eat anything. All of our dinner is going to go for our guests. But of course, if the guest sees The host is not eating, right? The family members that own the place, the Ansar, they're not eating. How will the Muhajireen eat? They're not going to want to eat. They're going to say, brother, if you're not eating, I'm not going to eat either. You're going through financial difficulties. Why are you feeding me? I'm not going to eat your food. You enjoy. I'm going to go find food somewhere else. So they said, when the Muhajireen come to eat, we will put out the lights, we will put out the lanterns. You know, they used to put lamps and lanterns with the oil. He said, we'll put out the lights. They're not going to see us. They'll think that we're eating, but we're not going to be eating. Only they will be the ones eating. Subhanallah. They made these plans just to make sure that their guests are happy. Make sure that their guests are content. How much do we care about our guests today? Subhanallah. When the guests come, everybody at home, some of us, we're frowning. Oh man, the guests are here. I want to go outside. I want to go and do this. You should love the guests. You should love when the guests come over. Allah Azza wa Jal is giving you an opportunity for mihman to come and enter your home. Bless your house with barakah. Follow the footsteps of the Ansar. Get the opportunity to implement many beautiful ahadith of serving your guests and being good to them. Guests are a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take it as a blessing. Don't take it as a calamity. That when they're going to leave, when they're going to leave, when they're going to leave. No. Invite them. Be happy for them. Smile at them. This is an opportunity of Allah Azza wa Jal. So now in Medina Munawwara, this is what you had. You had these Muhajireen who were struggling to get on their feet. You had the Ansar who were aiding them and assisting them. But now in Medina, Muslims were not the only people who resided and who lived in Medina Munawwara. That's what we're going to take a look at. So number one, you had the Muslims, of course, the Ansar and the Muhajireen. And the Ansar were further divided in two camps, the Aus and the Khazraj. Both the Aus and the Khazraj together, they made up the Ansar. And remember, Aus and Khazraj, they had a lot of friction in the past before they accepted Islam. They wanted to fight each other. They wanted to kill each other. They would always be battling against each other. But Allahu Akbar, when they both accepted Islam, Aus and Khazraj, brothers, sisters, unity, love, mahabbah. No differences between the Aus and Khazraj. So Muslims were there. The second group of people that you had were the pagans, mushrikeen. So just like in Makkah, you had mushrikeen, idol worshippers. They were mainly from the Quraysh. Medina also had idol worshippers, pagans, mushrikeen, but they were not from the Quraysh. They were the mushrikeen of Medina. And those were the mushrikeen of Makkah. So they were a little bit different. The mushrikeen of Makkah, they were from the Quraysh. And remember, Quraysh was the most prominent tribe in all of Arabia. So Quraysh, very noble, high level, and you can imagine the ones who were oppressors from amongst them, they were very arrogant people. Their noses were in the air and very angry and hostile towards the Muslims. The mushrikeen of Medina, they were not Quraysh. They were just your average Arab people. They were not at such a high lineage like the Quraysh. So their level of prominence, arrogance, was not at the level of the Quraysh. So many of them, they would watch the Muslims, and they would say, okay, let the Muslims do what they wish to do, and we'll do what we wish to do. They have their freedom, we have our freedom, no problem. So they wouldn't really interfere much between the affairs of the Muslims. And some of them, many of them actually, they would accept Islam and they would become Muslim. Third group of people were the Jews of Medina Munawwara. Medina Munawwara had a big population of Jews. And there were different tribes of the Bani Israel that were here, of the Yahud. You had, for example, the Banu Qurayza, Banu Qaynuqa', different tribes of the Jews, they were residing in Medina Munawwara. These people, they originally came from up north in the Syrian regions where they were persecuted. They were kicked out, they were having trouble living in the north. They came seeking shelter in Medina Munawwara. And if you guys remember, part of the reason specifically, because they're looking for freedom. They just want somewhere where there's peace. Of all the places they could have gone, why did they come to Medina? Does anyone remember? Yes. The place where the palm trees grow. Because remember, even in their scriptures, they knew about the coming of the next messenger. They knew there's a prophet that's going to come. And in their books, it was mentioned that that prophet, he's going to come from the place where the palm trees grow. And that place is Medina Munawwara. So some of these Jews, they came to Medina to live there because they were waiting for the last prophet. They knew he's going to come there. But Allahu Akbar, their racism led them to what? They could not believe in the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, again, we're repeating what came before, because the Prophet ﷺ was Arab, and he came from the descendants of Ismail ﷺ, whereas the Jews came from the descendants of Ishaq ﷺ. So they couldn't tolerate that. They said, we're not going to believe in him because he's from a different lineage. Now, the Jews that lived in Medina Munawwara, they were also arrogant type of people. They kept their own ways, they kept their own religion, they kept their own identity. And they would look down on all of the Arabs that they were living with. Because they would say, we're not from Arabia, we're from up north. We're from the Syrian region, we have our own identity, our own religion, we're literate people, we have our own scriptures. And these Arab people, they're all illiterate. لَيْسَ عَلَيْنَا فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ سَبِيلٌ. They would call them Ummiyin. Ummiyin means they're just illiterates, they don't know anything. We are literate people, we are smart, we are intelligent. So they had this attribute that they would look down on all of the Arab people that were surrounding them. And they were rich people, they became very, very good businessmen in Medina Munawwara, and they had a good trade in Medina. So the Jews, they were standing on a good solid 2 feet in Medina. Okay, so again, these were the 3 people that you had. You had the Muslims, you had the mushrikeen of Medina, again, who were not that hostile. They were not that angry towards the Muslims. And then you had the Jews, who were wealthy people, and they didn't really like the Arabs much. They came from outside, they were outsiders, but they kind of integrated into the Arab society. And subhanAllah, the narrations mention, one of the scholars of these Jewish people, his name was Abdullah bin Salam, radiyallahu anhu, and he became Muslim. When he saw the Prophet ﷺ, he heard the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, he saw the seal of prophethood between the shoulders of Rasulullah ﷺ, he became Muslim right away and he accepted. And subhanAllah, to motivate and encourage the rest of his people to accept Islam, the Prophet ﷺ called them and he said, tell me, what do you guys say about Abdullah bin Salam? What's your opinion about him? What do you say about Abdullah bin Salam? This is their scholar, this is their sheikh. Knowledge of the Tawrat. So they all said, Abdullah bin Salam, man, أعلمنا, he's the most knowledgeable from amongst us. Literate man, great man, good akhlaq, great personality. Goodness flows through his veins. Goodness flows through his heart. He's the best man from amongst us, most learned, most pious. Abdullah bin Salam, you will not find anyone like him. And then Rasulullah ﷺ said, what if I tell you, Abdullah bin Salam has accepted Islam and he's a Muslim now? What if I tell you, Abdullah bin Salam, he's accepted Islam and now he's a Muslim? So then what will you say? He's the greatest amongst you, he's the most learned. If he's become Muslim, then you should also become Muslim. Learned. But now when he said, oh, he became Muslim, they changed everything and they said, oh, he doesn't know anything. This guy never knew anything. He was always the worst of the worst. So see, when things would go in their favor, they would accept and they would praise them up till here. When things would not go in their favor, they put them down to the floor. That's how these people were. So now the Prophet ﷺ, he's here dealing with all 3 societies, and the Prophet ﷺ, he started to make treaties between all these different groups of people. That look, you're free to practice your religion, you can be a Jew, no problem, you can worship your idols, no issues, do what you want. We are Muslims, we will practice in freedom. And the Prophet ﷺ, he even made war treaties and war agreements between all of these tribes. And these war treaties basically said, if any third party outside of Medina wants to attack us, whether they attack the Muslims whether they attack you guys, it is all of our obligation to protect Medina Munawwara. Subhanallah. So look at the Prophet ﷺ. Politically, the Prophet ﷺ was very, very intelligent and very, very smart. The way that he planned and the way that he joined between all of the tribes that were in Medina Munawwara. Because he could have just said, we're Muslim, we're worried about ourselves. You do what you want, we do what we want. If anyone fights you, you're on your own. If anyone fights us, we're on our own. But no, the Prophet ﷺ, he knew and he understood. Politically, there's an atmosphere. You have to deal with things with consciousness. You have to deal with things very, very in a smart way. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he knew all of our neighbors, the moment the Quraysh want to attack, they'll join forces with these mushrikeen. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ made sure, any outside forces come in, you will protect the Muslims just like you protect yourselves. And similarly, if anyone attacks you, we will be at your protection just like we protect ourselves. Nobody will be allowed to aid a third party against any inhabitants of Medina Munawwara. So like this, the pacts, the treaties were all made. But remember, within Medina Munawwara, amongst these people, there were some that said, okay, alhamdulillah, we're living in peace, no issues, no problem. We're happy. The Muslims can live in peace, they can do what they want, as long as we're protected also. But from amongst the mushrikeen, you had certain group of people that were very, very, very angry and hostile towards the Muslims. Why Muslims are so powerful, why they have such control in Medina, why they are so revered and respected all around the Arabian Peninsula. They couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't say anything about it because they didn't have enough strength. But inside their hearts, they were angry about it. And this would eventually, it would lead to breaking of these pacts, breaking of these treaties, and it eventually led to warfare. One of these people, primarily amongst the mushrikeen who disliked the Muslims, his name was Abdullah bin Ubay bin Sulul. And inshallah we'll learn more about him later, how he conspired against the Muslims to incite war and make people fight against each other. He's the one that started a lot of this propaganda to make people fight against each other. And then you had amongst the Jews, the Yahud, there were also people from amongst them that were hostile towards the Muslims. They would eventually join up with the Quraysh. They would eventually join up with the mushrikeen to try and harm and cause differences against the Muslims. During this time, respected listeners, the Quraysh, they found out about the treaties. They found out that Muslims have allies. They became very upset and they became very angry. They started making their own plans to try and harm the Muslims. Now at this time, the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims in Medina, they also began to take consideration that at any moment the Quraysh could attack us. Because they're making plans. They're afraid that we're going to grow, we're going to become stronger. So the Prophet ﷺ, he would always, at night time when he would sleep, he ensured that there would be a bodyguard. Someone that would stand there and watch and make sure nobody comes from outside Medina to try and attack Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And subhanallah, when the Prophet ﷺ, he asked, who is going to be there to be the bodyguard for the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Immediately, they heard the clinging and the clanking of armor. And subhanallah, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu anhu became the first bodyguard for the Prophet ﷺ. Well, we shouldn't say first, because remember the first was Ali radiyallahu anhu in Makkah Mukarramah. But in Medina, the first one was Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Eventually, Allah revealed the verse, وَاللَّهُ يَعْصِمُكَ مِنَ النَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected you, O Messenger of Allah. Allah has protected you from the people. Don't worry, you are in Allah's protection. Once this verse was revealed, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, he told all of the companions, don't be a bodyguard, don't watch over me, don't do anything. You live your life and I will sleep in peace, because my bodyguard and my protector is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has promised that He will take care of me. No more bodyguards after that. When the Quraysh found out, they started stirring up activities. How can we harm the Muslims? How can we boycott them? How can we arrange for ways that we can cause harm towards them. They started making their plans. And remember, the Prophet ﷺ at this juncture, there's a lot of politics which are involved. So Rasulullah ﷺ also, he said, we need to be proactive. We need to do something before we can allow them to come into Medina Munawwara. So the Prophet ﷺ, he began by doing what? He started off by securing all the surrounding areas of Medina Munawwara. So the pathway towards Mecca, the area which is surrounding Medina, the Prophet ﷺ started to secure these areas. So he would dispatch armies just to go and scope and check what is surrounding us, who is there, what tribes are there, make peace treaties with them. So now let's just say, na'udhu billah, if the people of Mecca, they want to come and attack us, they're going to have to go through what? All of these cities and villages which are surrounding us, which we've made treaties with. We've made treaties with them. We've made pacts with them. We've made agreements. So the people of Mecca, they would not be able to pass through these cities freely. Because the people of these cities, they would say what? Where are you going? You're going to Medina? We have a treaty with the people of Medina. We're not going to let you pass. You want to pass through here, you're going to have to fight against us then. So look at the intelligence of the Prophet ﷺ. All the areas surrounding Medina, he made sure to secure them and make treaties, pacts, agreements with all of these people that were surrounding Medina Munawwara. So the interesting thing here, respected listeners, is that many of us, we say the first battle of Islam was which one? Badr. There were many small scale little skirmishes. They're not called wars, they're not called battles. They're called little skirmishes, which means, small little, you could say confrontation. Not a real battle, not a real war, but confrontations took place even before the battle of Badr. Small confrontations did take place. So let's go over some of them that happened. So the first one that happened, it's called Sayful Bahr. And what happened in this one? There were 30 Sahaba radiallahu anhum that were sent outside of Medina Munawwara. 30 Sahaba, they were going against 300 of the people of the Quraysh. Amongst them was Abu Jahl. And subhanallah, the Amir was Hamza radiallahu anhu. No battle took place. They just confronted each other. Right? Muslims on this side, non-Muslims on that side. People of Quraysh on that side. Muslims were here, Abu Jahl is there. And both of them are confronting each other. Hey, you talking about us? You wanted to fight against us? And those guys are saying, yeah, we have a problem with you. We have a problem? Okay, what are you going to do? You want a battle? Come. Both sides confronting each other. And subhanallah, in the middle of the battle, there was one of the people who, his name was Majdi bin Amr. He had connections on both sides. So he knew those mushrikeen, he knew the Muslims also. So he said, come on guys, let's make peace. It's okay this time. Let's not fight. Both parties left. This was Sayful Bahr, the first, you can say, type of confrontation. Then the second one took place, Rabi'h. This took place in Shawwal. 60 Muhajireen, they went out to go against Abu Sufyan. In this battle, there was no real fighting, but there were some arrows that were fired. Shots were fired. But there was no real battle that took place. And subhanallah, it's mentioned, both of these battles, Sayful Bahr as well as Rabi'h, the next one, Kharrar, also took place. Same thing, these were all just small confrontations where they would meet up with each other, they would talk, battle is about to happen, but for one reason or another, no fight would take place. Sometimes it would be such, there was a caravan of the Quraysh, and the Muslims would hear about it, they would go out to confront the caravan. Catch up with the caravan to check them, confront them, talk to them. You want to battle against us? We're here. You can't fight against us. We're going to defend ourselves. When they would go out, the caravan had already passed. So these little skirmishes, confrontations, they were of this nature. No real battle actually happened. Either they would be confronted with each other and then they would disperse. Or an army would go out, but the previous group had already passed by. before the second army could reach them. Then there was, for example, the invasion of Al-Abwa, where they went and subhanallah, what happened in this one? There was a contract which took place. So wherever the Prophet ﷺ would go, when the people and no battle would take place, the Prophet ﷺ would at least make a treaty. So he would build ties and relationships with all of these people. And subhanallah, the Mufassirin and the scholars of Seerah, they mentioned that in all of these, the Prophet ﷺ, he would appoint an Amir, like a real battle, like a real war, he would appoint an Amir. And the Muslims, they would carry a flag as well. So the Muslims would come out as a real delegation for the sake of defending Islam. And as all of this took place, eventually the mushrikeen started to become more fearful, and the Muslims, they started to become more powerful and more strong. And more allies, more treaties, more people. And the confidence was also building up, until eventually the first major battle of Islam took place, and that was the Battle of Badr. Inshallah, we'll continue from here next week about the Battle of Badr. Inshallah, next week we will do a quick rundown. Inshallah, next week will be our 9th halaqah, our 9th gathering. And then inshallah, the 10th. So we only have 2 more. Inshallah, the goal will be next week we will go over the major battles of Islam that took place after Medina Munawwara. So the major battles, inshallah, we'll give a concise and brief explanation of those battles. And inshallah, on the 10th one, we will cover some of the family of the Prophet ﷺ. I wanted to make sure we are all familiar with the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the children of the Prophet ﷺ, and then inshallah, the ending and the demise, the leaving of the Prophet ﷺ from this world, going into the next world, inshallah. We will save that for the 10th and final halaqah. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us all tawfiq. May Allah bless us all. May Allah accept these gatherings, inshallah, and make it a source of khair and afiyat for all of us, for our families, for our community, for our masjid. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that by us speaking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hearing about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may Allah Azza wa Jal make it a means of shafa'ah, and a means of meeting with Him, and a means of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam being pleased with us, being happy with us, and inshallah on Yawm al-Qiyamah, for us to be recognized as the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله.